Hello there. Welcome to the D&DummiesPodcast. Today we're short our main host, Daniel, but we have lore expert Sam here to fill in, and two dogs, Miko, longtime collaborator at the channel, and a beagle named Lincoln. I'll put photos of that up if you're watching this on YouTube. And, everyone's been talking about this new D&D movie, so I figured, hey, me and Sam, let's go see this movie. It was already on YouTube somehow.
Yeah.
So that was
free
interesting.
With ads.
I mean, I was able to watch it without ads, but you've seen some movies do like hey, we're releasing theatrically and digitally at the same time. I guess this is the same thing.
Maybe.
The weird thing was, they didn't show Jeremy Irons in any of the trailers, but he's right there in the beginning.
And what's really weird is none of the other characters that were in the trailers, like there's D&D stuff we can get stats for the main characters that D&D Beyond was promoting, but none of those characters are in the movie.
Well, I thought it was weird that they put a beard on Michelle Rodriguez's character with the axe. But before we get too far into it, I do have two sponsors to bring up for a channel. Very happy. Our first sponsor is an app on Kickstarter that will definitely never materialize into a real app. Here's what we're supposed to read to you folks at home. Please, God, just give me money. I told my dad that I was going to be a web developer. He's already so disappointed. Please, God. Please, please. And, of course, Red Bull. So, right out the gate, the visual effects on the Dungeons & Dragons movie was a little shaky.
PS1 graphics was how I would describe it. The first shot, I was like, oh no, we're in the PS1 era all of a sudden.
Sponsored by Red Bull, so... that's for real, baby. I mean, the Red Bull, not the money.
Which, unlike most of that movie, most of the backgrounds are the terrible PS1 CG.
Yeah. It's interesting to note, I think this new Dungeons & Dragons movie... it must have been something like development hell for a while, because when I looked it up on IMDb, it said it was from 2000, so maybe they, upscaled it, and that's why it looks so, AI.
It doesn't look upscaled.
Well, AI doesn't always get it right. But it's worth noting that the visual effects of this are a year after The Phantom Menace, and the same year as the first Lord of the Rings movie. So it has really no excuse to look the way that it looks. And I don't know why it took them this many years to release it.
Also, if I can start sinking my teeth into this.
Oh, so you've got some feelings. You know D&D.
Yeah.
I don't, so I sat there confused by a lot.
You're not alone.
Okay.
Knowing D&D doesn't help you in this scenario.
Okay, so for the record, Dan was... We could have found a way for him to watch this as well and be on this podcast episode, but he refused. So we promised that we would do it for him, and that he could just listen to us suffer. Lincoln, are you trying to roll it for investigation? Did I do that right? Did I say the right words? Yeah. Look at me. Less of a dummy every episode. Go ahead and sink your teeth into it, though.
So first of all, the whole thing that Jeremy Irons' character, who's named it's something really weird.
I was always more distracted by Kissy Lips, his sidekick.
Blue Lips.
Yeah, he looked like he ate a whole lot of cotton candy.
Honestly, what's really frustrating is they make him the main bad guy for most of the movie. He does 90% of the stuff, while Jeremy Irons was the only one actually acting. It's like, here's the thing. Even with the writing he has, he still acts the best he can to make it good.
Do you know why he took the role?
It felt like the band on the Titanic, where it's like, the ship's going down, but we're going to make something nice for you as you go. That's what his performance felt like.
It's literally the top piece of trivia on IMDb. Jeremy Irons had just bought a castle to live in, and he needed to pay it off. So that's why he took this movie. But yeah, no, he doesn't phone it in. My favorite Alfred is still just crushing.
It's crazy that he would look at that movie, see its production value, and not be tempted to go, oh.
So his name was Profion.
Profion. I knew it was something that sounded vaguely evil.
I thought it sounded like a drug you would get a commercial for.
And the other thing is, there's an insignia on the cape of Blue Lips.
Yeah. The dragon
One
thing.
of the 2 or 3 creepy bald guys in that movie.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
A weird amount of them. Gosh, I have so much to complain about.
I can tell you're physically changing colors, for the record. You're turning red, as though there's some type of PD piranha in your ears.
Oh, gosh.
Is that a thing from D&D, or did they make that up?
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Here's the thing.
Hang on, we've got a dog wrestle. Miko, Lincoln, be nice to each other. So, in regards to Kissy Lips, in his rumor weed ears.
Even though Jeremy Irons is in this movie as the quote-unquote villain, he spends most of his time arguing against who I like to call Fivehead.
Is that
the little girl, little Empress.
I thought she had more neck than head, but I do agree there was a lot of...
It was an unfortunate look for her.
They were trying to Amidala it.
I could tell.
The music was... I said that the music was by Juan Williams.
Oh, yeah. It was 100% they were trying to channel Star Wars. Here's the thing, though. The movie is so... it's fantasy racist.
Yeah. Oh, it's also just racist.
The dwarf character is just called the dwarf. He doesn't have a name. They just say the dwarf. And also, the main character is a jerk. He basically gets the only guy whose name I remember, Snails.
Yeah.
He gets his best friend killed, basically, by always sending him to go and get the dwarf while he goes and tries to rescue the girl.
Why is it that the black guy was the one that was best at stealing things?
I assume it's because they're both thieves, but he is the one shown stealing things as well. That's not great.
No, it's not. Also, I really thought they were going to reveal that he was secretly an elf the whole time.
Yeah, because I feel like it was one of the things they cut, because there's that thing where they go into the map, but then they never cut to them. They just track down the map, and then they come back. It's like, we got the thing!
By the way, they didn't show that there were, wizards or wraiths talking to them. Me and my wife watched this together. And we were both like, wait, did they bone in there? She was like, oh, maybe they're going to bone in there. And they come out and he's like, I made a promise. And they both keep smarming at each other. And then Snails is like, you what? I'm like, oh, so they just for real banged in there. And they worked out okay, well, as an agreement for my my purity, you have to then help me find the staff of cheap dollar store toys.
Also, that girl, this movie is not good with women. First of all, that one elf girl's armor, yikes.
Yeah, that was from the Joel Schumacher school of nipple armor.
Complete with a belly button.
I called her Angelina Drow Lee.
Ha!
Drow is the dark elf, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I felt good about knowing enough to make that pun.
And the thing is, for sure you think that Snails is going to be revealed as a half elf or an elf.
Because he's hitting on her and he's hiding his ears.
They have a scene where he intentionally pulls the hat back over the ears where it's exposed a little bit. And I'm like, so for sure it was one of the things they cut that was supposed to happen. They're just, we're just going to kill off your character.
Oh, there was an ending that was full on cut, where they were all going to show up and be made the heroes of the realm, knighted by not toddler Amidala. Mm-hmm. And the director said it was so bad he didn't even bother to put it in the DVD bonus features. And considering the rest of the movie he chose to put on a screen, and it's an interesting story. I'll tell you more about that because you're clearly about to rant. So you go ahead, and I'll tell you about how it was made.
Furthermore, the organization that they're dealing with, it's not clear who it is. They've got capes and a symbol on it. It's never clear who they are. They're just,
okay, so that was confusing for you too.
Yeah, they're being incredibly vague, and and even though they're using D&D properties, you see beholders. First of all, beholders are not foot rank soldiers. They should not have been on guard patrols with regular people. That is not how beholders behave. You could try a lesser beholder and say it's a mage thing, but by no means would a random guard patrol just have beholders walking around.
Well, my wife was like, "Hey, why is that meatball floating?" I think she kind of thought it was the Pokemon with the arms. That's a big rock guy, or whatever. Yeah, that was interesting because
they talk about we can control dragons. That's their whole thing, is using a weird MacGuffin to control dragons so that he can fight the Empress, who also can control dragons.
Yeah.
And then every time a dragon dies, it kills the
Dragon Wars.
Yeah. So it's bad news bears for everyone. But here's the thing. In D&D, there's specific types of dragons.
Yeah.
They don't ever specify. They say that one lets you control red dragons. The other ones that look like they're probably supposed to be gold dragons are never called gold dragons. They're just called dragons. And it's never specified. The hierarchy and the nature of dragons never explained. It's never explained if they
Which is more powerful, red or gold?
They're supposed to be, I think those are the ones that are supposed to be equal, because there's good dragons that are metallic and evil dragons that are chromatic, and they each kind of have equals along the scale.
Chromatic sounds like a cooler look, though.
Yeah.
Wait, can Dragonborn have chromatic scales?
Yeah, the Arcan is a chromatic dragon because he's a red Dragonborn.
I didn't know red was chromatic. I just thought it was red. It's color shift, right? That's what you're saying?
That's just the name that D&D gave the dragons.
Because chromatic usually, hang on. I'm going to look up the official thing of... Okay, chromatic. Relating to or using notes belonging to a tectonic plate, relating to or produced by color. Okay, so maybe it doesn't mean that it has a color shift. It just means that it's highly colored. Huh, I was mistaken. Usually when you see chromatic...
And metallic because they're all like a type of metal. Gold,
I was just
silver.
thinking of color shift.
So the metallic dragons that are all named after types of like metals, like gold and silver and all that, are the good dragons, whereas chromatic are usually your standard evil ones.
Interesting.
But they do not address this. It's just red dragons, and they don't even call the other one gold dragons. They just say, it's her dragons.
There's a big light warp that opens up and the dragons just come out of that. I thought it was just you could control a dragon. I didn't know that it meant they would just, like, come out of a void.
Also, let's take a moment to talk about the only female character.
All right, hey, you know what? We were gonna kind of do the running joke, like, man, Chris Pine looks so weird in this. Oh, what'd they do to Michelle Rodriguez? This is, like, we were gonna do a whole bit that we were reviewing the wrong one and didn't know it. We know this is not the right D&D movie. We're gonna see the good D&D movie. It's by the people who did Game Night. Mm-hmm. We love that movie. I've watched it, like, 5 times at least. I have it on Blu-ray.
And those are the people to get for a D&D movie.
Super great. But it's pretty clear this movie is just so genuinely bad, we don't really need a bit surrounding it. This is just genuinely, like... I've seen Green Lantern. I've seen Catwoman. I've seen The Room. I've seen the 3rd Tremors movie. I've seen the 6th Tremors movie. This is worse than those movies. This actually, like... I had an allergic reaction last night, and that was the second most uncomfortable part of my night. This was the worst. So we're just going to drop all pretense of, like, the bit. Mm-hmm. It's just so bad.
To be fair, for me, it was falling apart at the seams anyway because I was too busy channeling my rant.
It opens on fog, and there's no fog obscuring something that you eventually see. You just can't see anything. I thought my screen was broken.
Also, you pointed this out earlier, but the Star Wars systems, especially in the soundtrack, are so clear. Not to mention the evil Empire. They almost
do the Imperial March every single time Kissy Lips is on screen.
Yeah. And they just have Kissy Lips, Blue Lips guy, they just have him beat the snot out of snails and kill him.
It felt racially motivated. Because every other fight is like, and it's kind of slow and lacks energy.
Not to mention that it's every character here just is so stagnant. They do not change or develop at all. The woman character...
Hang on, we've got it.
She has no development. Also,
with the mage that's racist against everyone who isn't a mage.
Yeah.
She has development. Her glasses come off, and then her hair comes down, and you realize she's been beautiful all along. 2 scenes into meeting her.
Yeah, that's it. Also, she has the ability to make, like, all this crazy... She captures them with her weird spell that gets the characters...
Yeah, the ropey-dopey.
But then she never does anything else useful with the spells ever again. She just falls around and helps the main character escape with portals. That's all she does for the rest of the movie. And the only other thing she does is get spanked by one of the creepy bald guys.
Yeah, my wife pointed that out. I went to go grab a drink, and in the time I looked away, she was, like, sexually harassed by a bald man from Labyrinth.
And there's no, like, there's no charisma amongst the other characters except Irons that it just feels creepy.
Every time...
There's no saving that
every
scene.
Time
or
that,
any of them, really.
That, Ripley Anna Jones smarms at the fucking screen. I wanted to kill myself and everyone involved. I watched the credits all the way through. My wife begged me to turn it off. I said no. I want to know the name of everyone responsible for making this so I can punish them for the sins against humanity.
I mentally just tried to purge each name I saw, but I watched through in case there was, like, an end credits scene, in case they were ahead of their time, and maybe, like, a young...
Well,
I thought maybe a young bard, a young Chris Pine would be in it.
It's a...
So... Where was I? Sexist, racist. The dwarf is just called a dwarf, and he's gross and lives near a sewer. His house, they jump in his house to escape, and then they go down into the sewer. So his house is just next to the sewer.
He's just a homeless,
and he doesn't have a name. He's
from
just
Pirates of the
dwarf.
Caribbean. That's the guy from Pirates of the Caribbean. He's the guy with the wooden eye guy as his friend.
No.
I recognize that head anywhere.
And he, like, barely speaks. He just spends most of the movie going, rah, 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 rah. And I'm like, can you talk?
He was the only guy I was rooting for. And then they go to the bar. And he's like, I don't want to hook up with an elf woman. I want a bearded dwarf so I have something to hang on to. And then he motions violent sexual motions. And I was like, oh my God. There are no likable characters. I was rooting for Jeremy Irons by the end of it.
Yeah, because he's the only one with charisma on the screen. And he spends so little time actually being the villain. He argues against one of the other characters with low charisma.
He's the Palpatine.
Yeah, but the thing is, he spends most of the time arguing against the little girl, which is not the character you want him acting against. Not that there's a lot of great options.
She, I would say, is arguably one of the best actresses in the movie, though. To be fair, she handles
Yes.
her dialogue well.
Yes, but there's really only like maybe 2
Good actors or women in the whole
women.
movie? Well, I meant in general, like against her male counterparts. But yes, the other 2 women have, like, the elf girl was just there to look attractive and wear booby armor. Although, to be fair, she did have the best outfit because John Solo, by the end of it, doesn't even have a cloak on anymore. And it's just cosplaying as Han Solo. And every fucking time he looks at the camera and tries to do a Harrison Ford, look, I'm gonna jump on some, look out for that spike. Do you know what his big action credit was before this?
No.
He was Jimmy Olsen in the TV show Lois and Clark. And they're like, this guy, I believe, to be fair, he puts us all into whenever he's doing combat acting, but he tries to be way more charming than he is, and the script makes him a total douche.
Also, the final fight against the Blue Lips and him, he gets a special sword that flashes blue when he strikes, and the other guy has red when he strikes. So
subtle.
It's
And the
Star
other
Wars.
guy doesn't want to serve his evil emperor, but has to because he's in armor that keeps him alive. And they're trying to they're trying to stop the evil empire, and politics play a big thing. And there's a young princess who's in trouble. And there's a snarky. I called her Marianne Ravenwood Padme Skywalker because she was just Padme and Princess Leia and Marianne Ravenwood from Indiana Jones rolled into one. And none of the redeemable characteristics.
No.
Just all of the whining. Maybe I'll take off your head. You look better that way.
And the other thing is they barely world build in this. They just establish those filthy mages. They live up there with all the good stuff, and then it talks down to like commoners. I don't think this is set in a D&D setting. I don't think there's a D&D setting that this applies to.
You know what?
I can't think of one it would apply to. I'm not an expert on these things.
People who are experts on older D&D and just D&D in general, feel free to comment on this and tell us, hey, no, this was based on the setting. Lincoln, you are
what
out
setting,
of breath.
tell us what setting we can play this in.
I thought it would be actually really funny to have someone make this a scenario and see how much better our campaign was going through it.
I'd be better acted at least.
Well, yeah.
Except for the irons part.
Because you can literally pinpoint every single scene and say, this is from Indiana Jones, this is from Star Wars. It's not even subtle. The music isn't subtle. The acting...
They also... At one point, there's this creature, I don't know if it exists in older D&D, but I don't recognize it, with like a one eye in the center. They look at him and it's like, hey...
The purple dude, right?
Yeah. They just look at him and they single him out. And feels like a race thing. They single him out and start talking to him, start being mean to him. And then later when he walks up, like, get away from me, you guys. And then he says, great, now we follow him to the guild guys. Like, why couldn't you just follow him without bothering him?
Yeah, because now he's suspicious.
You just harassed some guy for being a different race. I thought they were like picking a key or
something, but no.
You just harassed a guy for being a different race, and then as far as we can tell, you based on that race, just made the assumption you worked for that guy and happened to be right.
Also, for a guy who's dressed up in purple with a weird third eye that looks like it's either coming out of a cupcake or a female reproductive organ on his forehead, that wasn't the weirdest part about what he was doing. It's the fact that anytime he walked into a room or said anything, he'd then go, and stick his tongue out.
Yeah.
What's up with that? Is he a frog man?
I have no idea. I've never seen anything like that in D&D.
He's like a cupcake vaginoid, we're going to find out. Some race that didn't make it into later editions. Which, by the way,
why.
I don't understand why D&D calls them races when they're clearly species, not race. Because if you're like a blue dragonborn and there's a red dragonborn, those are races. The species is dragonborn. Like Lincoln here, who's presenting his belly because he didn't have to. Did he have to watch the movie with you last night?
Technically.
Oh, you're so lucky. You're colorblind.
Both of them were there. Because my headphone jack was destroyed by someone.
Oh.
So I just played it with the audio on.
Well, you know what? Actually, that feels like a fair punishment. Man, I was like, this is gonna be. I like movies that are so bad you can laugh at them. Like, I'm a big fan of, oh, that's so bad, we need to watch it again. Like, I do that. I'm a Mystery Science Theater 3000 type of guy. This was not one I could enjoy making fun of. When I had to stop because I had to go run an errand, there were 30 minutes left on it, and I thought there was going to be, like, maybe 5, and it was still 30. I'm like, ugh. I turned to my wife, I'm like, you know what? We don't need to finish watching this. It's fine. I'll watch it on my own some other time. She turned to me, she said, no, you started this, we're not quitters. We're finishing this thing. And she made me finish watching it, to her credit. and I referenced it this morning, and she said, if you ever reference that again, I'll divorce you, and then continued making our coffee. So I would give it probably not a lot of stars from her. I would give it a magical rock on the tombstone of your friend that ambiguously erases his name from a stone
And is
out of
implied
10.
to resurrect him.
Where do they go? What does
I
that
don't
do
know.
to them?
It's one of those vague things where it's like, what just happened? You're like, well, you didn't know? This is the evil empire. This is that. There's so many, like, fill in the blank. You clearly get what's going on. It's like, no, we don't.
He was like...
Tell us what's happening.
So, Snails, first of all, terrible name. Also, he played it like he was an SNL skit character in a movie that was trying to be serious.
Uh-huh.
Not his fault. He didn't write the script.
And honestly, he's one of the few, when he does, like, the Blue Lips impersonation, that was, like, the one good outside of Jeremy Irons scene.
When he walks in Blue Lips' room and he sees the armor, he goes, he acts like he's going to backhand the armor. Like, yeah, what's up? Like, he acts all tough. I laughed. And then he fell into a cake carpet.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the hell is that? What the hell is that? Is that it? Is cake carpet a spell?
Not to my knowledge.
I think it was supposed to be quicksand, but it looked like cake batter.
It
and
did
it made
look
me
like
hungry
cake.
for angel food cake. Or funfetti,
It just reminded me of the 101 Dalmatians movie.
Wow. You know what? That movie is better. But how dare you reference that? This is going to be a deep cut. This made me look at Bible Man as though it was James Cameron's Avatar. Just a production value through the roof by comparison to this.
Yeah, it is... I mean, the way it handles its characters... Again, the main spell... One, they never address how the whole mages, commoners thing, it works.
Yeah, I didn't know that was even, like, an issue in society for them, of, like, mages think they're better. Also, can mages... We talked about this briefly. Can mages just not do magic unless they have, like, a bag of magic?
Typically, they need, like, what they are called spell components.
So how did she do magic the first time to rope them in the room
Poor writing.
Okay.
Poor writing. Because...
What were the tiny demon gremlin things that are always
I think
laughing?
they were supposed to be, like, imps or something.
Is that what an imp looks like?
No.
Okay.
But I just assume, because that's the only thing... That would be functionally what does that. And, designs shift over editions.
Also, I was shocked how often you have the entire party, and they go to a thing, and they're like, no, only you, protagonist. Only you can go through. I'm like, what?
Uh-huh.
So the whole point of it being a party-based game, you guys just remove them from the scenes totally.
So that he can be Indiana Han Solo.
In the maze, they are literally watching him do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, I guess in D&D, you are sort of watching your friend
And again,
roll.
much like every other character in this, they do not evolve. They just slightly adjust the level of, like, caricature they are to the situation.
Yeah, uptight mage girl is still uptight.
Mm-hmm.
Elf girl still is... I don't know if I can even characterize her outside of booby plates, frankly.
She's supposed to be, I think, the serious one, but...
No one has any charisma, so they all felt serious.
Yeah.
And Dwarf is still a messy, hungry, kind of chauvinistic small person.
Probably a racist caricature of something.
The only character development is Snails dies, and even that gets undone.
Yeah. And the whole thing is, he basically got killed by his friend who kept insisting, you go save the dwarf, I'll save the girl. And he's like, why do I always have to save the dwarf? It's like you're trying to... And he basically is saying, we should have just kept being petty thieves. Why are you getting us in this venture? It's like he knew he was going to get killed off and not get a chance to reveal that he's actually
Also,
a half-elf or whatever.
Everyone else who gets hurt, the biggest damage you see anyone take is there's a small fingernail scratch across the neck of Marianne Ravenwood Princess Leia.
No, because the main guy gets stabbed with the sword by Blue Lips, but then he gets healed by the guy who talks about the Force.
But when Snails fights Darth Blue Lips, he gets his arm broken repeatedly, pimp slapped across a castle, beaten with a speed that I would expect from a Street Fighter game, and then tossed like a rag doll, like 5 stories to his death on the ground.
It's one of those things where it's like that, the first Jurassic World movie, where it's like, that woman has like 5 deaths.
Yeah.
And it wasn't quite to that level, but it was like, this is weirdly aggressive for one of your characters that was kind of your comic relief.
Yeah, he was the one thing that I think added any sort of levity, and then they're like, no, he's gone. And obviously the dwarf was just hairy Chewbacca. He was like the hairy, filthy, hard-to-understand, grunty man.
That's why, but it's so much worse that they make him hard to understand, and like occasionally syntax words come out, and you're like, oh, so he can speak?
Even Obi-Wan Kenobi type character dies in the opening so that Marianne Ravenwood Princess Leia Amidala can go on the journey with her 2 roped boyfriends. It gets... And the maze was so blatantly Temple of Doom.
And then they see what I assume was supposed to be druids, but it's that guy who basically says magic is the Force, and gives the Ben Kenobi speech
Yeah.
as he heals the main character from the only other actually grievous wound of getting stabbed through the shoulder by blue lips.
Because I was like, oh, like that's kind of like baller if he's like cutting through like his clavicle and like his heart, like that's so painful. Like the clavicle is actually the most commonly broken bone in the human body, oddly enough. You'd think it'd be a finger. So like I don't like broken bones. So, like this is brutal. Okay, maybe both protagonist characters are gonna get a brutal, painful. But then it just goes like half an inch in, and then I guess he's implied that he's holding it with his hand, but that would just cut his hand.
Yeah. No, he's got. You don't understand. He's smarmy, so he can stop it by being smarmy.
Also, can we talk about the faces he makes while he's holding the red staff?
Oh.
He looks like he's having like a weird.
Oh, I'm remembering it now.
Like he's got the one ring, and also someone's putting a finger in his butt, and he likes it. He rolled for orgasm, natural 20, kasploosh. That's why he changed his outfits partway through, because he had to change his pants. Yeah, when Indiana Han Solo Ripley was having orgasm face while holding the cheapest dollar store staff to control the red dragons in the world, I asked myself, did the people who made this hate people?
Also, they never acknowledge. They say that when a dragon dies, like the area basically kills all the magic and like natural life in the area.
Did they say that?
Yeah, and
Okay,
then a
I
dragon
missed that.
dies mid-fight, which means the whole area is screwed now. But they never address that.
Because I saw a dragon fall and like get impaled on a cheap steeple, and I was like, how are they gonna fix that? What are they gonna do with that body? How are they gonna get it down?
What are they gonna do about the like killing the life and magic that a dead dragon causes?
Yeah, that was a Death Stranding event.
Yeah, basically. It's a magical Death Stranding event, and it probably wasn't the only dragon that died since all those dragons were fighting.
For the record, a Death Stranding themed D&D campaign would be pretty baller.
Yeah, and the idea of like dragons dying being the source isn't a terrible idea.
I mean, it's terrible if you're a dragon.
I mean, yeah.
Or magic user. But my character of Karen the Barbarian would be completely fine. By the way, do you know the actor, Kissy Lips, what the actor's name is? It's an amazing name in real life.
I do not.
So I'll tell you the character's name first.
Again, I try to purge all the names from my mind.
He plays Damodar.
That's right.
Which is not
I think it was
name.
Damodar, is how it's pronounced.
Like, I care.
Damodar.
Do you want to know what his real name is? And they should have just used this for the character.
Sure.
Bruce Payne. I am not joking.
That's a better name.
Imagine, every time he's like, go ahead and try, I'd turn to my wife and I'd be like, or I'll kiss you. And that would be like, I wanted to like the cut across his neck. Oh, look, I've left some blue lipstick. Oh, that'll be such a pain to take off. Like, he became Zarbon at some point. Honestly, if they'd played that character like Zarbon, just full of innuendo,
also,
that would have been amazing.
Why not make it the thing in his head like a mind flayer tadpole?
Yeah, I thought it was weird because I was like, maybe that's like a famous spell or
that's
something.
Something that like a powerful spellcaster would probably be able to remove and also have access to put on them and be like, you better do what I say within the time frame.
Jeremy Irons didn't need a bag of magic. So is he not a wizard? Is he like what's the other one? It's like druid?
I don't think they play the rules. That's the other thing. It's not clear if there's any class system for any of the characters.
Yeah.
Two people say they're thieves, but it's not clear if their skill set is specifically built around that.
Yeah,
if the other guy gets a magical sword and fights with it, there's a lady who's vaguely a spellcaster, but I've already addressed how she basically does nothing except get spanked. And I wish I was saying that metaphorically, but I'm not.
I mean, she does also get beat up a lot. She spends half the movie looking really filthy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then they kiss on Not Endor after he's gotten his speech from definitely not Bilbo Baggins.
Yep.
It was like, there was a lot to be mad about.
And I think those were supposed to be druids, but who knows? I just basically gave the forced speech. I
kept thinking that we were going to find out that, like, Snails was like, actually, my name was, like, Snailkakis, and I'm an elf prince. And
exactly.
I thought that was going to be the big grand twist.
Because
of, like,
they were building up the racial tension. I was like, oh, and the girl doesn't like him because she's, like, an elf, and, like, but maybe he's... And he's like, well, I got my own secrets, and it's like, maybe he's, like, nope, he's dead.
Yeah. I have to assume at some point that was the plot.
That had to have been, because he literally, there's a scene where he's just kind of exposed and he puts it back down. I don't know if that's just
while the Empire's walking by, too. Yeah. So you're like, oh, are they racist? Because there's a lot of racism so far in this movie. So maybe he's like, they'll definitely lynch me for being a elf.
A dark elf.
But yeah, hang on. Let me see the messages I sent you guys while I was watching this, because I was like, I knew I wasn't gonna remember everything.
Oh man. And like,
Yeah, the movie has Angelina Jolie wearing nipple armor. The movie was composed by Juan Williams, the legally distinct John Williams. I've never seen a more racially motivated character death in my life. And then our sister responded with a meme from Breaking Bad that said boobies, and I responded with the image of kissy lips and Jeremy Irons smiling at the Dragon Massacre with the response also boobies, which I'll probably use as the thumbnail of this, frankly. Cause I like the idea they're like boobies.
That's
yes!
right. I forgot that picture. I didn't know the context for it yet, so I didn't.
Okay.
Wow.
Also, tell me, I'm pretty sure I saved this image because I was looking this up and I was like, this looks like these two men are performing sex on one another. There you go. That whole encounter between Kissy Lips and Jeremy Irons, when he's behind him and saying, "Don't fail me again," it's filmed as though they're throwing milk, as one might say.
And you look. There's one thing I've learned from the Christian movie about like Dungeons and Dragons and how it's evil. Sometimes when hiring low budget actors, the line between that and just like I'm gonna try acting is I think there might be some cross pollination.
Yeah, the lines between it almost became a parody several times, and then like even there's talking about the racism, or I guess classism. When Juan Solo goes into the Temple of Doom and he sees all of the gold and he's looking for the magic dollar store toy of stuff, and he sees a skeleton, he's like, finally Mage got what he deserved. And he's like, the skeleton is like, what the f*** did you say? First of all, it would have been really funny if he actually was mad and slapped him. But
I would have loved to just see him get slapped.
He's like, hey, anyone who uses this will have a terrible death. And I'm like, okay, so maybe the whole twist will be that he's like, no, I won't use this power, and he intentionally gives it to Jeremy Irons because he knows it'll like.
That would have been cool.
But no, he's just like, no, I won't, and he just smashes it. Right? That's what happened. I'm not.
Yeah, he smashes it with his lightsaber.
Got it. Yeah.
And he doesn't, as far as we know, yet die a horrible death.
His bright rapier.
And the other thing,
not a lightsaber.
And the other thing is, he's in this place filled with treasure. He is a thief, and his friend is like, "We should stop trying to be adventurers and heroes. We're thieves. We should leave and try to stay alive." And then he dies. Then he goes there. He's in this place filled with treasure. He picks up some gold, and it says, "No, not for you, Snails." And he leaves the gold there, which is completely the opposite of everything Snails has been saying.
So my wife made a comment, and I don't know if I missed it and she caught it or what, but doesn't someone say when you go in there, only take the one thing? Like, is it some, like, Pirates of the Caribbean cursed gold situation?
I don't believe so. I don't recall hearing that.
Because when she said that, that was my explanation for it. But she could have just been joking, like, making fun of it the way we had been the entire movie.
I don't recall that being said. I think they tried to say, like, oh, he learned from the death of his friend to not steal. But his friend was the one saying they should just go back to stealing and being thieves.
Yeah, so if he wanted to honor his friend, he should have stolen everything.
Exactly. So it's more like spitting on his grave, like, not for, hey, if this is for you, Snails, spitting on your grave.
But then he does give him, he gives him the red gem in the end, and then it erases his name from a rock, and somehow that means that it can teleport all of them to another dimension or something.
Where presumably he's back, I guess.
Maybe there was the reveal, like, I'm actually an elven king and I can't die. I don't know. So elves in Lord of the Rings can just choose not to die.
That's handy.
They're like, no, I'm not going to get old. I'm immortal. Q. Which is why, so I know about Lord of the Rings because my wife is a huge Lord of the Rings nerd. And she was like, no, the Dunedain, sorry, honey, you're not listening to this. Let's be real. She had to watch the movie. She's not listening to this. The reason that Aragorn was so important is because his family was half elf, essentially. So they can live. He's like hundreds of years old at that point in the movie, or the books even. But basically, the whole big struggle there is that Liv Tyler, the beautiful elf daughter of Agent Smith, is like, I'm going to choose immortal life to be with him. I'll give up immortality to be with him and grow old and die, because that's what life is about. And he's like, why would you give up being immortal? I'm Agent Smith and Megatron sometimes, and a Red Skull that one time. And that's like a whole thing. I don't know if that's a thing in D&D of like elves are just like, no, we can just live for like ever if we want to.
They have an incredibly long lifespan, but they do not, to my knowledge, live forever.
Okay, so that's a Tolkien exclusive.
Yeah, as far as I know.
Interesting. I don't think that's a thing in C.S. Lewis's stuff either, because that was all sort of like the contemporaries of the time. Man, this movie just really did feel like someone watched all of the Star Wars and just like made sticky notes of each scene description from that in the Indiana Jones movies, and then threw them all up in the air, and then stuck them up without looking in an order, and just changed Empire to Empire.
It's like someone said, what if someone just changed some Star Wars stuff and made it D&D? And then they told you, it just did a full run-on take of what it was, and then that's what you just watched.
So, like, I made the joke, because, like, it clearly ripped off Star Wars, Indiana Jones, it's got some Lord of the Rings thrown in there. I named, like, 2 or 3 other things that it was just, like, blatant. And then I was like, which means if you watch this, it's in one movie, like watching 25 other movies. That's... Why waste your time with that other crap when you can watch this one movie that does all of that? I made that joke. I was like, oh, this is so much better than Lord of the Rings. And I started joking. And I looked over, because out of the corner of my eye, my wife had gone from, like, mocking the movie to glaring at me. I was in, like, I don't care that you're joking. I'll kill you in your sleep. Maybe that's why I had my allergic reaction last night. She just poisoned the bagel bites. What a horrible, horrible way to find out I'm allergic to one of my favorite childhood snacks. I was sitting there with an itchy throat and lungs thinking about this movie.
Look on the bright side. It might have just been the movie.
Yeah, maybe I should try eating them again without the movie in my presence. Because that could have been the key feature of just my body was like, you're going to make us watch that? Oh, we're going to choke you out with plants inside of you. Which, that was another thing. I think they were trying to show the progression of plant in him. It just looked like he had fallen asleep with, like, headphones on. The whole time I was just like, dude, take your headphones off when you go to sleep. Your ears are so red. That's all I could think. Or like he'd been wearing earmuffs too long.
I thought for sure he was going to be left for dead with the whole like, please, you said you'd cure me.
But he had to do a final sword fight.
He did. And I'm glad he got cured, because for the record, even though he's a terrible person who definitely committed a hate crime. But...
both racial and fictional racial in that world of...
Although it's never clearly revealed, because he hit it so well.
He's not a mage, so already a class attack.
But, like, you kind of... It's not clear if he's doing this willingly, because he's got that weird thing. He starts off doing it willingly, but then he gets those things like, they'll make sure you do what you're supposed to do.
And I kind of took that as, oh, maybe the reason he has to wear this armor is because it's holding his curse at bay, and he's, like, being held hostage, and that's why Jeremy Irons is such a dick to him.
I thought maybe they're going to play into, like, a level of, like, oh, well, maybe we can play an angle and get him on our side.
He's clearly Darth Vader. He's a bald white guy with scars and armor that keeps him alive. Serving an evil emperor.
Potentially supposed to be reluctant, but they didn't play into that.
But then they reverse it where he's the one that gets tossed down the long shaft. Or off the side of a castle spire. By the way, there in the first, like, 30 minutes, there are so many establishing shots of that bowling alley CGI castle. I couldn't tell if they were supposed to be different castles or not.
Bowling alley CGI is a good example of what this looks like, actually. I was thinking PS1 era, but bowling alley...
PS1 was at least stylized.
That's a good point. Bowling alley is the perfect
You can play the original
example.
Resident Evil and you're still having fun. You can go to a bowling alley and you're like, okay, just show me my score. I don't need to see that I got a split.
I don't need a fancy walking, talking... bowling ball.
However, I will say, if a bowling alley were to get a hold of the original green screen footage of this and use that in their bowling alley cinematics, I would want to see that.
If you get a gutter ball, it just shows the shot of the dragon falling on the spires. Oh, gutter ball.
My, maybe my cheese allergy wasn't so much the bagel bites. It was just all of the Jeremy Irons acting. Because he ham and cheesed it up as hard as he could.
But he's also the only one really doing any acting you can watch.
I was comparing him with my wife. I said, it reminds me of Neil McDonough, Damien Dark on all the CW DC shows of, like, this show is so bland, so dog water. And then Neil McDonough shows up in a scene and he just eats it up. And you're like, the thing he's doing and saying is so cheap and stupid. But my God, I can't stop looking
Exactly.
at him.
Like the moment he breaks out of a coffin by a cult that tries to bring him back, and he's literally just beating people up to like...
Return of the Mac.
Yeah, Return of the Mac, and he literally stops someone as they're mid-attack, wags his finger at them, and punches them.
In the middle of like a record scratch, no less.
That's insane, and I love it. Is it good? Probably not, but it's amazing.
Which convinces me that the CW is on the same budget level as this 2000s Dungeons & Dragons movie. I actually want to know, what was the budget on this thing? Let's find out.
That could be disappointing.
Well, the return is going to be disappointing, I'm almost certain. Oh my gosh, featured reviews. Okay, well, we don't need that just yet. Did Courtney Solomon ever do anything else, or did this person just, like, Oh, first of all, that guy looks like Chris Pratt. I thought that was Chris Pratt. IMDb, you confused me. He did Dungeons and Dragons, An American Haunting, Bullet to the Head with Sylvester Stallone.
Oh.
Universal Soldier Regeneration. I think that was actually a good movie.
Look at that. He got better.
Well, I mean, the only direction to go is up. And again, not entirely his fault. He didn't want to do this. I don't want to act like I'm dunking on him. He was a victim of these idiots. I can't find out the box office anymore unless I have IMDb Pro. Yeah, sorry, not happening.
But yeah, it was very weird because it felt poorly researched, even just the logistics of D&D, which is insane for a officially licensed Dungeons and Dragons movie.
A budget of $45 million. How much box office do you think it managed to rake in?
Not $45 million.
$33.8 million. Usually the rule of thumb is you have to double your budget because of advertising. But I don't know how much advertising there was in 2000, so they could have only... I mean, it still didn't break even regardless.
Yeah.
But I am curious...
I mean, that's more than I was thinking it would be, admittedly.
This is fascinating. Background on the movie. The earliest attempt at a feature-length adaptation of based in the early 1980s is there was strong interest in producing a film based on advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Gary Gygax had several discussions with producers and agents about the idea. The screenplay by James Goldman. What have you done? The Lion in Winter. He's a novelist. However, nothing came of this due to conflicts between TSR and studios. Dungeons & Dragons player Courtney Solomon, who had personal experience with the entertainment industry as a child because his mother was a production coordinator on a television series filmed in Toronto. So there's your CW connection. That's why I felt that way. Wanted to produce a film based on the game since 1990. In 1990, Solomon contacted staff with Dungeons & Dragons publisher TSR Inc. under the guise of working on a school economics project. Wow. They informed him about the studios in the past failing to produce a film based on the game due to having too little of an understanding of the RPG's X factor. It took him 18 months to convince TSR to set up negotiations. TSR finally agreed to it because of his upfront royalty being better than other studios. The company worked with, according to Vice President Solomon, obtained an option from TSR after writing a 30-page proposal showing how he would adapt the game and going through 3 months of intense broker dealings with the game publisher. 18-month-long trip across the world funding the film. Once a draft of the screenplay was created, one of the most financing depending on the foreign distribution rights. During a trip, he met a leading businesswoman in Asia named Alan Zimmerman, who viewed the 24-year-old as a young, ambitious, artistic person and a convincing salesman. Originally, he planned to have Dungeons & Dragons be a $100 million studio project with big-name directors like Francis Ford Coppola, James Cameron, Rennie Harlin, and Stan Winston were attached at one point. In addition, the script received positive coverage from the magazine Movie Line Premiere. Movie Line Premiere also announced the project in a 1905 issue when Winston was signed on. He was going to do 14 Creatures. Majority studio and directors loved the screenplay but turned away due to lack of recent success in big-budget fantasy genre. And the main actors' lack of star power. Solomon and the studios encountered blah, 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 blah. Cameron considered the project just before he did Titanic. So he chose Titanic. He made the right choice. That's one of the highest-grossing movies ever. But the deal did not suffice due to their failure to come up with a merchandising deal that appealed to 20th Century Fox, where Cameron worked. Paramount Pictures, Lightstorm were also destroyed due to strong disagreement on how to finance the film.
So this is where it falls apart. The financing part is where it fell.
Yeah, I saw Joel Silver on here. Joel Silver is a famous movie producer and also a restorer of a lot of really cool old. His name's Franklin Lloyd Wright. I think his name. The apartment Deckard has in Blade Runner, that style of house, that architect stuff. He restored a lot of that. In the moment, I can never remember these people's names. He produced Die Hard, all that as well. TSR sold the rights to the original game to Wizards of the Coast, so that's where they enter. I know Wizards of the Coast; they currently own everything. The plan changed to a $3.5 million direct-to-video film. A $100 million budget appeared too risky. That seems right. Required availability in Prague. Blah 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 blah. Test shooting 3-minute scenes in Los Angeles. Joel Silver was so roused he stayed on the project, executive producer, and raised the investment to $30 million. So that's 10 times what was going to be. Zeman put the money up for the project in addition to Solomon, his grandfather Joe, oh no, these people took out personal bank loans to fund this. No. Oh no. So yeah, okay, hang on. Writing began in 1991, the goal being to create, this is the quote that I was like, are you kidding me? The Star Wars of fantasy genres.
There it is. There's
using the original trilogy as a template for the story arcs. Really? I couldn't tell. It was so subtle.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the writers gave an idea of the quality to expect. He felt that other fantasy films had been bad, but he wanted to replicate Raiders of the Lost Ark. So, yeah, they literally just watched Star Wars and Indiana Jones on loop and were like, we'll make that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing. Talented people had already made those movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, so reboot. Okay, so that must be the movie that actually got made. Reception. Opened number 5 at the box office. Okay. Critical responses. Let's just say they weren't good. Award nominations. No, what? Who? Oh. You don't want to be nominated. Worst picture, worst sense of direction, worst supporting actor, worst supporting actress, worst on-screen group, most intrusive musical score, least special effects, most unfunny comic relief. Ooh, here we go. Best supporting young actress and Cinescape genre Face of the Future award. Wizards of the Coast released a fast-play game based on the movie called The Sewers of Some Doll. It is a DVD-ROM feature on the DVD as a printable PDF file.
That's right, because the place is called Some Doll, and they spend a lot of time in the... It's literally the setting of that movie. It's real.
So Some Doll is a thing in D&D.
It's the setting of the movie.
I know it's the setting of the movie. Okay, so it's not in other stuff.
Not that I know of.
So you're saying that... This could be our... What's the world that Matt Mercer came up with?
Exandria?
Some Doll could be our Exandria.
Ooh, boy. Could it be, though?
Here's the thing. If we try to make it, even me knowing nothing about D&D, it can't be worse than the movie.
That's true. And technically we'll have Jeremy Irons, canonically speaking.
Canonically. I'm going to make Kissy Lips a more imposing threat. I'm going to make him kiss people to death, like Poison Ivy. That's why his plants coming out of his ears.
You need rubber lips.
I cast rubber lips. Oh my gosh. But yeah,
wild. Just a wild ride.
I really expected this to be like, because like Batman and Robin, another movie known for its nipple costumes.
Uh-huh.
I was like, that's a movie you can watch and laugh at. Like, there's spectacle to
it. Sing.
And this is a movie that I would argue borders on, like, torture. Like, I think if it was this... or like sleep deprivation and waterboarding, I think the Geneva Conventions would crack down on screening this on loop first.
The only thing it's missing to actually make it a form of torture is a musical number.
I also think it's funny that the person was like, hey, I have connections to Hollywood. My mom helped be a production person for some Toronto TV shows. And they're like, whoa, who else was going to them that was their big, oh, wow. That's kind of ridiculous.
I mean, the one person quoted him saying he was a good salesman, so maybe he was just very good at...
And again, I don't blame him, because the original idea of a huge budget, real actors, and good directors seems like a pretty good idea.
You could argue that's what they're doing now.
I mean, think about it. The same year, Lord of the Rings proved that is a good combination.
Uh-huh.
They just didn't have any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to be like a dick to any of the people involved in this, because like they got paid. I enjoyed Kissy Lips. That's a sentence someone's just going to take out of context. That's going to be on my tombstone. I enjoyed Kissy Lips, and it's going to be his face with blue lips.
But don't worry, once someone's to gemstone, I'll resurrect you and it'll go away.
Yeah, and no one will know what happened to me. It felt like a very...
Also, that you were supposed to be knighted. They were going to be knighted, but then they just leave.
Yeah, he says, I don't want to be late for my coronation ceremony. I got a black jacket now.
Because Star Wars, they have to have a coronation.
Yeah, and so they're going to go, but you're hearing the speech as though it's already happening, and then he's like, I can't be late, and he fucks off to Fairyland.
Yeah.
And
his dead friend that died because of him is dead. Is presumably alive now.
Well, I mean, we're basically writing the spec script for the sequel. We want to get all the original actors back. Most of them, their most recent works have been like 2010. So I think this was sort of like a, maybe we shouldn't be saying yes to some projects. Because I'm trying to think, like, the best part of the whole thing. I mean, Jeremy Irons and Kissy Lips.
Jeremy Irons, for sure, the best part of it.
Because if you're going to make me watch a worse Indiana Jones stumble his way through a bad plot in a bowling alley, you better give me Kissy Lips and Jeremy Irons. I am so tempted to make Kissy Lips because like an actual character that the next time we do a campaign, I'm like, I am Lord Kissius of the Lip. It's just so. Also, they never. Is blue lipstick a thing in D&D that's like a culture?
Not to my knowledge. No.
Okay, so they just did that.
Yeah, they just did that.
Wow. Okay, a lot of bald men, a lot of lipstick, a lot of velvet costumes.
And again, one of the bald men was the creepy one that spanked the girl.
Yeah, but not the guy I expected to spank her. They really subverted my expectations.
I don't know. Everything about his posture and attitude made me think he's creepy, I'm uncomfortable, and then he did that.
At one point, he stands up, a fellow thief, yes. And he stands up, and he goes back to the women. He stands up, and this woman's on her knees in front of his crotch. I'm like, this guy's going to get a blowjob in the middle of this movie. Is this one of those weird 80s movies?
Talk about a power move.
That's what I was like, yes, you can ask me for things while someone's gargling. Like, she's doing a constitution saving throw for how well she can fight her gag reflex for this guy. And the whole time, I'm just like, is this going to be one of those weird 80s and 90s movies that has just, out of nowhere, nudity and sex, and then never addresses it? Is this like a real swordfish situation? And then when Angelina Jolie shows up, I'm like, this is my one chance. We might get boobies. And then it never... Even in the brothel cantina that they ripped off from Star Wars, the whores are wearing shirts. I'm like... You're not even Slave Leia right now. To be fair, if I was a woman, I wouldn't want to... I'm like, if I'm going to put my body out there, I'm going to do it for art. So I get not wanting to do it, but the fact that they couldn't get anyone drunk off the street to just, hey, we'll pick up your tab if you just stumble through our scene. No one would take it. Shocking. I always try to, like, find, like, what's the worst movie I can enjoy? And that's not so bad it's good, because I think that's a different thing. But, like, I think of, like, the Venom movie, or Morbius, right? Like, you're like, this is dumb, but I'm enjoying it. Or Fast and Furious is so dumb, it's fun. It knows what it's doing. But I'm trying to think of a movie, it's like, this is the lowest threshold I have for I'm still enjoying it. Like, Venom is very close to just being bad, the first one for me. I haven't seen the second yet. This is so far below Venom. It's like we've popped into a new crystal sphere.
I think this is probably... The last time I watched something that was this bad was probably Muppets or Bahapa Hooey.
You gotta stop referencing this garbage.
I was just thinking of something that I rated that low in my brain.
I would say if you want to watch Dungeons & Dragons, this movie, you would be better off just playing D&D while Bible Man is in the background. That's the same experience.
Yeah.
And it'll be over faster.
And it'll be better acting.
This was like an hour-and-a-half movie. It felt longer than Zack Snyder's Justice League. And that's a 4-hour movie.
Yeah.
To be fair, that movie doesn't feel like a 4-hour movie.
I did pause a few times to be like, is it not over yet?
I'm trying to think another... The Irishman. That's a long movie. And it's a slow burner. This felt longer. So, yeah. How would you rate this?
Low.
I would rate it 2 kissy lips, plants out of dead snails.
I would, like I said before, Jeremy Irons is the band on the Titanic on this. It's still going down. It's still in the water at the end. It is a disaster.
If you find a YouTube supercut of all of his scenes, you don't need to watch the movie.
You just don't need to watch the movie in general.
Well, yeah. I kind of want everyone to watch the main character.
Just so they can appreciate how he's clearly...
The most punchable man I've ever seen, yeah.
Try to convince himself he's Harrison Ford when he's not.
God, I don't know why they kept making him, like, turn to the camera. He would look just past camera and go, I'm like, don't you fucking do that.
Yeah.
His charisma score was real low.
Yeah.
Also, he just is straight up, like, a douche.
Yeah, like I said, he gets his friend killed. Well, and sends him after the dwarf while he goes after the girl.
He says to the woman.
Well, that too.
When Ripley Anna Jones is talking to Marianne Ravenwood Amidala, they don't seem like they like each other. Then they go into a scroll that they didn't have the VFX money to do any of the scenes for, apparently. I assume. And then they come out and they're BFFs and he's, like, betrothed to her honor. I'm like, they definitely boned. And there's nothing in the movie to say otherwise. In fact, I feel like it heavily implies they did. Because suddenly he's like, no, I have to save her. And she even, it's like when Marion's like, Indy, and she's being carried off by Nazis. She even goes, Ripley, while she's being carried away by the Imperial, not March.
Yeah.
The Imperial Trot is playing. And he goes, I'm gonna get you, don't worry. Mages, why'd it have to be mages? Yeah.
The classism and racism is far too intense.
Yeah, I mean, kudos for not, like, trying to make it politically correct and actually using stuff from the universe, but not kudos for making it so unbearable and having no likable characters.
I mean, I don't know if that deserves kudos. I think we've all been leaning more towards, like, let's blend it a bit and make it a little on the subtle side.
I mean, also, I was like, I'm pretty sure D&D has necromancers, so snails could just not be dead.
Yeah, resurrection spells and stuff are a thing, but I think...
Maybe he was just taking a long rest.
Let's not try to dissect it, because he literally gets resurrected by a weird gem that has we do not understand the plot relevance
Also, he never says, I don't think he ever says, I wish you were here.
It's not a spell thing.
But she says it granted your wish. But he didn't ever wish. He just said, I gotta go,
Because he would never verbally wish his friend back. He hates him.
Yeah, he's a dick.
Yeah.
God, this movie's bad.
And
anyway,
they're racists.
So we're actually going to do a real review of the actual movie at some point. But also, hopefully, in the future, I want to do one as me, the idiot, talking to you and Dan, who's probably listening to this while he's at work. Because we've intentionally removed him from this so he can just witness it at work.
He can witness me.
I want to do
It was a very Fury Road killing ourselves for this experience.
Yeah. Well, this is like when I promised someone for their website that I would play The Last of Us Part 2 and write a review for them. And I was like, I made a promise. This was the only other time I've regretted it. And it wasn't like a disappear
in a map, got to bang someone type of promise.
No, I got no sex out of that promise. To be fair, he was a mustachioed man, so I wasn't really trying to get that out of that. But I would have liked to have at least gotten some kissy lips. Or like a staff with a ball in it that makes me make orgasm faces in front of a red light. That would have been nice. Either of those. Or just to be friends with a girl in booby armor, really. With full-on pointy nipples.
And she was so mean to the guy to Snails who was hitting on her. And then he dies, and she's like, he doesn't even acknowledge it. None of them hardly acknowledge it.
I thought they were going to shock us and have it where the dwarf and her hook up, and you're like, oh, they've seen past their racial biases.
Nope.
And no, there's no character...
The dwarf is barely verbal, barely can speak.
I think the most talking he does is while his face is full of food, eating a turkey leg in a tavern. And he's mostly racist and sexist in that scene.
Yep.
Because he's basically just like, I'd rather bang a dwarven woman because she's like a man and you got a beard to hang on to. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And he's like, elf people are subclass. And I'm like, ah.
What a weird movie.
What a bad movie. But I'm hoping to do a podcast episode at some point where I can just be like, hey, I literally don't know what it would take to play a D&D. What does a newcomer need to play D&D? Can they play, like, just general questions, and then I'd like for you guys to have the same questions for Warhammer, and we can do that on the Nuclear Heart podcast, the one I normally host.
Yeah.
Because normally I'm not trying to carry a Dungeons & Dragons themed anything, because let's be real, I know about as much as the people who made this movie.
Yep. Probably more.
Yeah, probably more. I go where Joe Mango's is.
Beholders as foot soldiers.
Well, because they're like Gardock, because they can behold people trespassing.
That's not how they work.
I kind of knew that wasn't how they worked, but I was like, I'm not looking for anything here. And then he falls into cake, so I wasn't exactly like... I'm going to make a spell at some point with someone, and it's going to be
cake sand?
Yeah, cake sand. And I was like, it looks like a regular rug. It smells vaguely of sugar. You step in it, and you fall in at a really reasonable rate where you could have grabbed onto something nearby and crawled out of it. But
also, Kissy Lips saves him and then beats him up and kills him.
Yeah, he could have just given him a kiss and pushed him further in. The next
just
time
leave a blue mark to
like the mark of Zorro, but on his forehead. Like, this man was killed by cake and kissy
But this movie is, again, vaguely racist, so he had to pull him out so he could beat him up and throw him off a castle.
Plus, no movie in the 90s would have ever, even as a villain, let a main character be any type of gay. They would have just been like, what? No, it's just a man with lipstick that likes to beat up men. There's no hidden message. No, we framed Jeremy Irons talking to him while he's grunting like something's in his butt, just for cinematic purposes.
You gotta it's about seeing the vision that the director had.
I'm convinced he was blind. Anyway.
I wish I was now.
thanks for listening to the D&Dummies podcast. Next time we'll have the actual expert on this, although I think, at least by my standards, you know a lot about D&D. How many books do you have? Like, you have a lot of their rule books.
A lot of them, yeah. I know
more
a fair
than 6,
share.
I believe.
Yeah, I've got a fair share of stuff. Knowledge.
So, and did you run the Curse of Strahd, or was that?
That was me, yeah.
So you know D&D.
I know I share stuff.
So
I have my crystal spheres of knowledge.
Confirmed, this was not good by even your standards.
Absolutely.
I did not know about the dragon, like, there's no magic here thing. Like, if they said that in the movie, didn't catch it.
They did. I know that because they didn't establish that, and that's not established in the lore of any other universe I know
so
of.
that was a thing they made up and then ignored.
Purely to screw over their entire universe, probably because they're like, let's make sure this universe dies.
Is that... I mean, yeah.
Because the amount of dragons that probably died in that fight,
their
world's done.
At least, like, 6 of them die.
Their world's done.
I did like at one
it's
point...
over. Those were the 2 main kingdoms.
At one point, a dragon does use his tail to slap another dragon in the face mid-flight, and I was like, that's a clever way to use their things. And then, pretty much it's just... I kept joking, like, Game of Thrones wishes it looked this good. Like, I kept doing, it's like, Avatar with the Tree of Life, they ripped off the Dungeons and Dragons movie. So, needless to say, and I was talking with Daniel about this actually yesterday, because I'd watched part of it, and then I ran into him. And I was like, I think everyone should have a movie this bad to watch before they go see a new movie, because then you're so grateful for everything that the other movie does. Mm-hmm. Like, now when I go see the new Dungeons & Dragons movie, it could literally be garbage. It could be Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Yeah, that's right, I went there. And I would actually like it. But also, it's made by people who I think are really competent, so the chances of it actually totally sucking are minuscule, and I like Michelle Rodriguez in a way that I cannot describe without probably being, like, my wife would find out. So... I'm gonna like that movie. Also, I know they won't, but if they could have Jeremy Irons cameo in it as his character,
that would be amazing.
That would be the greatest mic drop in the world. Like, the post-credit scene is like, I'm back! And he's just shaking his hands violently in the air with his gloves.
My dragons!
Anyway, thanks for watching, listening, however you consumed this. And, believe us, this, however painful and chaotic as it may have sounded and felt, is not nearly as bad as the Dungeons & Dragons movie. And if you don't believe us, it's free on YouTube right now. So if you hate yourself, go for it.
Yep.
Dan will be back. He will return in the next Avengers movie.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're listening to this, Dan, you put us through hell. This is payback for that Mads Mikkelsen movie I had you watch. Polar.
Oof.